It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I'm doing another hardware review. As you know, my goal for 2024 has been to go low power as much as possible, and I'm really getting close. I'm getting there. I had Terramaster reach out and ask me if I would like to do a review for their NAS system, but as a person who loves open source software and loves the ability to run my own hardware, I was pretty intrigued by it. They originally had asked me to review this piece of hardware, which is an add-on storage piece. Then they later asked me to review this piece of hardware, which was the actual NAS and hardware in itself. And they were kind enough to get Western Digital to donate a few hard drives for me to put into these things to try to test out with. So pretty great that I didn't have to put any kind of expense into this. I did tell them that I would need a packing slip to be able to send this back to them as part of the agreement for doing the review here, but I did want to do a review of it just so you guys have as much information as possible. If you haven't gone out already and bought a NAS system or bought a system you want to build into a NAS, if you're looking for something that's already built up, this might be the right direction for you. Now, they did ask me to review also their operating system, which is called Terramaster OS. Terramaster I've never used, so we're going to go through it together and kind of see what it looks like. And then I'll let you know what else you could put on this thing, such as some other open source operating systems if you preferred to do that. The Terramaster stuff out of the box might be the right fit for you. If it is, I want to make sure you've seen it and you've got the opportunity to really understand what it can do for you versus some of the other open source options that are out there. With that, I'm about to do an unboxing. If you don't like unboxings, I totally understand that. Some people like them, some people don't. Feel free to look down in the timeline and use the timeline to jump ahead to the next section if you don't want to see the unboxing, if you just want to see the hardware overview and then the software overview. I'll have all that stuff in the timeline so you can move around down there as well. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much to all of my patrons over at Patreon, to all my subscribers on YouTube, and to all the people who do buy me a PayPal beer or buy me a coffee through PayPal. I mean, it makes my day when I see those things come through. And when I get messages from you guys on Patreon, it just means so much to me. For the people that are part of my Patreon, as being a member of Patreon and doing that monthly commitment, you also get access to these videos ad-free. YouTube puts ads in the videos. That is a little bit how I make a little bit of money out of doing this stuff. It's not a living. It's not something I could live on, but it's a little extra money that helps cover the cost of some of the donations I do to open source projects, things like that. But really and truly, I appreciate how much you are helping me out by either watching the video, clicking that like button, clicking on the subscribe to be subscribed for more videos in the future. And definitely the folks over at Patreon, man, I can't say how much it means to me that you want to donate money to me every month for doing these videos. It is a huge, major deal to me that you do that. I truly appreciate it. Now let's get started. For full transparency, Terramaster did reach out to me and ask me to review these products. They offered to pay me, and I told them I would not accept any pay for the product review, that I also needed packing slips to send these products back to them when the review was completed. They will not be allowed to see this video before it is published. They are not allowed to have any input on what the video contains. I did ask if it was okay to do the review using an open source operating system, and they did ask me to at least look at Terramaster OS and do a review of it as well, so I am glad to do that. But I do want to go through an open source operating system on these devices as well and see how it performs. So we'll go through that as well. All right, for the next part, I'm going to be doing the unboxing. So the first thing I'll do is just this Western Digital box. Now, I've got actually 4 of these drives. So they sent me over a pretty big box that had these things in it. It's got all this confetti stuff inside for shipping. Always fun, yeah. So it always comes in a really nice holder, which is great. If you get these things where it's kind of suspended as it's traveling, that's probably a good thing when it's a spinning drive like this. And then, of course, it's got your static-free bag here. I believe these are 4 terabyte drives, but let's open this up just to make sure so I can read the print, and I'll kind of show you guys what this looks like. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a 4 terabyte hard drive, which is awesome, and it's the Western Digital Red, so it's a server style drive, I believe, as well. Yeah, again, thanks a ton to Western Digital for providing these things. Again, my requirement was a shipping label so I can send all this stuff back at the end, but really cool of them to send this along so I didn't have to go buy extra hard drives to try to do the NAS review, which is pretty great. So I've got several of these that we'll be putting into this other hardware here in just a minute. All right, let's open up the main unit here. So It came in a much bigger box. I've already gotten out of that larger shipping box just because it's just a shipping box. When you open it up, you get a little bit of information here on the lid, which is pretty great. Oops, hitting the camera because it's actually a pretty big box. I do like their packing. It's pretty nice. So they've got foam inserts here, and then your instruction manual, and then they've got a pull-up system here that's going to have a lot of our hardware and stuff like that in it. So let's go through that box first. Go ahead and kind of flip this back around. And if we open this up, I'm sure this is going to have hardware items in it. Yeah, so it's got your power brick and your power adapter, and then we've got a cable for hooking things up for USB. No, Ethernet, sorry. And then we've got our instruction book. So pretty standard stuff you'd expect to find in anything where you're opening up the box. If we go back to here, if I can keep from hitting the camera stand with the box, we've got an instruction book. This is probably going to have some paperwork in it. Yeah, so it's just got the instruction book for overall user guide. We'll kind of flip through that in a minute, but it's there, so it's something you can look at. All right, I've got a couple of foam inserts that hold it in place there in the box. I'm going to move the box out of the way because that's all that's left in there. And then this is packed in the normal packing material to try to keep it from getting scratched and scraped while it's in transit. And I'll pull the back off. And right here on top, you see they've got a warning sticker, but they've got Terramaster. This is the side, sorry. Here's the front. So very similar to many NAS systems that you're going to see. It's got the 4 bays on it. We'll kind of figure out how those work here in a minute. And then just on the top, plain black. I like that. I think this is the seam where it might come apart. On the back here, we're going to have some I/O, and we'll go over that here in a minute. And then here on the bottom, you've got 4 rubber feet, which are pretty nice. They're pretty padded. They got a little bit of stickiness to them, so they won't slide around on smooth surfaces too easy. That's pretty great. So when we look at the back, we've got the power button up here at the top. Then you've got HDMI. You've got 2 Ethernet ports. We'll find out what speeds those are here after a while. You've also got 2 USB-A ports. I think these are Type 3. And this is a USB Type-C port here. And then we've got this power adapter plug. I didn't look at the little barrel connector, but this looks like it has a star shape. So I don't know if that's just to help hold it in place or if it's really that shape and you have to have a special plug. So we'll find out here in a minute. And you've got a really nice big exhaust fan here as well. Pretty well built. It feels pretty solid. Now it is plastic, but it does feel pretty solid in the hand. Even when I kind of move it around, I don't feel anything shaking inside or anything like that. So I really like that. That's a nice piece of hardware right there. So we'll definitely get to this one here in just a little bit and we'll get it set up. And for our last piece of hardware, it's the add-on here that also came from Terramaster. And I'm just going to pull the little tongue out again. And really, same kind of box. So we'll just flip that lid open, flip this open, and it's laid out almost exactly the same, except this box is in the front in this case. But again, we're going to have hardware with our power brick and an Ethernet cable, so pretty similar to the other box. No instruction manual on top here. This might have been a unit that they already sent out to somebody for review and just didn't get that back. But then we've got the same foam inserts. This is just a little bit smaller, not much smaller. But again, it has the nice packing bag, which rips almost immediately when you try to undo that tape, but that's okay. This slips off, and again, you've got very similar. So there's our Terramaster logo on one side. Here's our I/O on the back. The top is, again, very smooth with a seam right here. And then the other side. And then you've got the 2 bays in the front. Now, I think this is just an add-on unit, but it's got its own HDMI display, so maybe it is actually like a full NAS system that's a 2-bay system. I really, from the interaction I had, I understood this to be an add-on, so we'll find out here in a little bit. But again, you've got the power button, HDMI. You've got 1 USB Type-A, 1 USB Type-C. You've got 2 Ethernet ports. Again, we'll find out how fast those guys are in a little bit. And then you've got your barrel jack connector for your power. And then a pretty good sized fan. It's not quite as big as the other one. Let me turn it around. So you can kind of see those side by side. The fan on the right there is quite a bit bigger than the fan on the left, which I think you would expect considering this is a 4-bay unit on the right and this is a 2-bay unit on the left. Very similar in build quality and build style. Just one is a little bit smaller since it only holds 2 drives. So really overall, pretty nice hardware out of the box. Alright, let's just quickly add a couple of drives, or actually we'll just add a drive to this. So the way these open is you've got a little push area up here at the top that makes it push in, and you can see it flips out here at the bottom, and it's the same on this one. And when you push that in, you can just start pulling from the bottom and the tray just slides out. Now these trays are pretty nice. They've got a little nipple here, I guess is what you'd call it, that goes into the actual space of the hard drive where we normally put the screws, and then it's got a little rubber grommet to help with vibration. But I understand that these little pieces come off the sides. It does make it easier to get the drives into place for sure. I also said earlier that Western Digital has sent me four 4-terabyte hard drives. This is a 4-terabyte hard drive, but actually the other 3 that they sent are 8-terabyte hard drives. So I'm not sure why I got a mix of those, but that's okay. Still appreciative of it. And so once you put these in, they actually go in pretty easily. And if you just look from the edges, you can kind of see this looks pretty even all the way down. Same way on this side. And then we just do take this little piece. And again, if you just line it up here at the top and kind of put it in, it's not going to go in right away. Just kind of hold it with one finger. Same thing on this other side. Put that in there. And then once you've got them in place, you can kind of squeeze. Make sure you've got your drive seated all the way down, and you can hear that snapping sound, I hope. That's these things seating into the drive. So now I moved that first drive I put in over to the drive 3 slot. I'm going to put this one in drive 4. Now for this last part, I've just got a couple of 8-terabyte Toshibas that are my personal drives that I've had laying around. I had them inside of an appliance, and I've removed them, so these are going to have some data on them that I'll have to get rid of first. But I'm just using these. Don't blame Western Digital. They didn't realize that I had the 2-chamber one here. So it's not that they didn't want to send me the drives. They just didn't realize I had this other drive bay. It does work the same way, it looks like. So it's still got these little tabs here you pull off from each side. It's not super difficult, believe me. It just takes a little bit of coordination, so you want to make sure you're putting this thing on from the right direction. So we're going to put the front in this way, push it all the way up to the top, make sure it's in there, make sure it seats pretty evenly, and then just take this, and again, you just put it up right there at the top, and you should feel that kind of go. Now I could probably just click that in. Yeah, I can. I don't have to wait till the other side's in to start clicking. But then you can take the other side and you do the same thing. Just push it up to the top of the rail. That little pin should line up with the hole, and you can start clicking things into place. Now I want to make sure I click these in all the way, because they do slide in a lot easier when you actually get them all the way in. This piece where it pushes in should be towards the top as you face them in. And if I've got this in, it should slide in pretty easily, and it did. So the first one I'm going to run is the 2-bay Terramaster here. I've already plugged it in, and you can see I didn't have to push the power button. It looks like it's already starting, because you can see the LEDs pointing right here. You can see the power and both drives. And I'm going to go ahead and point you down to my power meter. And you can see here it's pulling about 5.7 watts right now, so pretty low power. Of course, we're not really running anything yet, so let's just make sure it's actually on. I don't have it connected up to any video monitor or anything like that. So I'm going to press the power button real quick. Okay, so that did a post, so maybe it wasn't actually on. Yeah, now it's pulling like 50 watts. So let's see how this progresses down to 24 watts. I can hear the drives trying to spin a little bit. It's kind of staying consistent now around 24.5 watts. So not too bad. I mean, as far as power usage, it's definitely not like 750 watts, which is great. But just something to be aware of. So I hear it posting again. It's got something beeping. Let's see, it's dropping down to 21 watts. So yeah, hanging out around 20 watts. We'll see if it drops here in a little bit. I mean, that's not terrible, but definitely I'd love to see an idle a little bit lower than that if possible. So I'm not sure, but this tnas.local looks like it might be it. So this is running on port 26 and it shows port 80. So let's try to get to that, or it's IP26 on my network. And let's see. It says loading the bootloader from server, please wait. Okay. It's been plugged in for a while. I haven't restarted it since I did that. So let's find out if it's having some kind of error. We can always try to reboot it here in a minute. So I'm going to zoom this up just a little bit for you guys, and it says here's the IP address, which we know because we're connected to it. But it says only one LAN port can be connected during initialization. Please keep your TNAS device connected to the internet, otherwise you cannot install Terramaster OS online. You'll need to download Terramaster OS installation package from Terramaster's official website and install it manually. Okay, so let's just do start. It says warning, using an incompatible desktop hard drive, e.g. Barracuda, or an unhealthy old drive is likely to cause a slow response, drive drop, system crash, or RAID crash for your Terramaster NAS. This may lead to total data loss. Oh, that feels great. Well, let's look at their hard drive compatibility list here. Let's open up a new link and a new tab, and it goes to a bad gateway. That's never a good sign. Let's just see. Yep, still bad gateway. So this link doesn't really help us. All right, let's just hit next and we'll see kind of what happens here. And it says, how do you want to initialize your TNAS? So default or custom? Yeah, default, okay. It adopts the default configuration, which is relatively simple and fast and is suitable for ordinary home users. So that would be me in this case. This option requires your TNAS to be connected to the internet. And then custom requires step-by-step settings and takes longer time. So maybe we'll do the custom on the bigger NAS here in a little bit, but let's do default for this smaller one. Data on HDD1, HDD2 will be deleted. Are you sure? Yeah, let's just say confirm. So it's going to go through a download. I'm not going to make you watch the progress of this happen. We'll pick it back up here in just a minute. So just out of interest, it does tell you that you have about a 10-minute wait for the download to finish and to get everything installed. It says that it restarts, so it looks like everything may be working. But it does tell you, like, if it takes forever, if it gets stuck, you may have a bad hard drive or something may be faulty. It's something for you to investigate at that point. So far, everything looks like it's working fine, so we'll see kind of what's going on. But it says there is a PC desktop application, but we should be able to automatically get into the system page here in just a little bit. So you can see the time left that they've got set for this to actually go back to it. We'll see if it actually takes that long. All right, the counter finished and it came up to this page here. So it says, what do we want the device name to be? So we could name this anything we want. Let's just call this TM2Bay, something like that. And the username, we'll just call this Brian. And a nice strong password here. And we're going to confirm that password. And then we'll put in our email. And it did detect Central Time. Awesome. And we'll say send code. I'm going to guess that's going to send it to my email. And it did send that code to my email. I'm just going to paste in the code that they sent me right there and hit next. And it warns me again about the data on the hard drive. I just hit next. And it says you can configure advanced functions or install more applications by accessing the TOS on the computer, Terramaster OS on the computer. To access TOS, enter the following IP address in your web browser, which is what we're already doing, or we can go here to use the short local name. We're already doing that with the IP address. And again, end user license agreement. So I think they're going to make me scroll because if you'll notice, it gives me the you can't click yet. So we've got to scroll all the way through it and then we can probably click it. Maybe it makes us take, oh, I have to check the box. So you have to get to the bottom to check the box. It says I've read it. Now, if you've never read a terms of service, I highly recommend that you check one out. It usually has some stuff in there that makes you go, whoa, I don't actually want to do that. The sad part is it's a dumb thing that makes you say, yeah, I agree, and then you have to click the box if you want to keep using it. You can't not agree and then use anything anyways. So it's almost a pointless thing to make you go there. But here you've got some stuff popping up. So let's just agree to the terms of service here, and we'll hit continue. And out of the gate, this is not a bad looking user interface. The RAID and storage pool 1, so synchronization started. The process will take around 1,270.1 minutes. That's a long time. Since RAID synchronization can slow down device performance, it is recommended that you stop using the device until the process is complete. So yeah, there you go. That's a lot. It sent me another email. Let me just see. It's the same notice. It just came in through email. Not really sure why, but okay. So here you can see there is a storage pool that it created automatically, and it's doing a synchronization. It's apparently a very slow process, but you can see it's trying to synchronize the 8 terabytes between those two drives. So it created basically a RAID 1 array, I believe is what it is. Yeah, RAID 1, or this is storage pool 1, but I think that's a RAID 1 where it mirrors the two drives together. So we can look at volume. It's going to show us volume 1. It's still trying to synchronize. And again, it's going to show you that you've got a total of 14 megabytes being used out of the 8 terabytes. So that's probably just something that it needs for keeping track of the volumes. It'll show us hard drive information as well. And we've got 2 different hard drives here. And it'll give you a little bit of detail as you go along. So if we go to the hard drive specifics here, you can see each one is an 8 terabyte. It's a Toshiba drive. So there's the ability to, once you've got these things ready, you can actually click on the drive and then click stop, start. So there's a few controls here for the drives themselves. We can go to the smart status. It hasn't come up with a smart status yet. Hard drive log, so it's just going to show us a little bit of information that says the drive is plugged in. And then Iron Wolf health management, again, not set up yet. The data is just not there yet. This is really early in the process of seeing this. So the synchronization is going to take a little while. I'll probably come back and finish recording after this is done so that I can show you everything that's going on in the system. But we'll look really quick. So we've got virtual disks that we can create, it looks like, USB device that we could plug in as well, a hot spare, and hyper cache. And this looks, it's not scrollable. That's a little bar to grab it and kind of resize the side panel here. Okay, so cool. So a few things here on the control panel, which is great, and we'll let that finish doing what it's doing. And then in the meantime down here, we can see the password strength. They say my password strength is terrible. Okay. File system snapshot, we haven't taken one. So they give you all these warnings, which is kind of nice. It's like, hey, here's a bunch of things you might want to take care of. Not too bad. We're going to close this for now as well. Over here you can see the file manager, which is nice. One of the things that I wish TrueNAS had was a file manager built into TrueNAS. It's a little bit weird to me that you go to TrueNAS, but then if you want to see any files on any of the storage or shares that you create, you actually have to attach from some other machine through SSH or through some kind of FTP service to see whatever files you've put over there as backups or anything like that. I kind of like that this has a file manager. We'll have to see if that actually lets me see the files that I'm moving over, but interesting. I really like it. Here's your technical support. So if you do need technical support, Terramaster does have a technical support system. So if you have Terramaster OS running like this one, you can use this to get their technical support as well, which is pretty great. They have an app center, so we'll definitely check that out and see what it looks like. They've got your security advisor. That's what was up on the screen just a while ago, so we'll kind of go back through that later. Control panel we've seen. They've got the backup, which I like that they've got a backup system here, and they're saying like, here's your file system snapshots, here's your time machine backup, so you can set that up. You can do snapshots, you can do TFM backup. I'm not really sure what that is, but we can read about it here. So the Terramaster folder mirror, so okay, this makes a mirror of everything that you've got, kind of a backup mirror. You've got your centralized backup as well, which is kind of nice. I've been working with some open source stuff to see what we can do with this, but this is really cool that it comes built into a system where you've got, this is going to be your backup system, and I would guess that you then go put a client on your other systems and tell it what to back up to your Terramaster system, which is pretty awesome. We've got our cloud sync backup, not something I would probably use, but it's there and available. And then you've got your USB copies, so if you want to attach a large USB drive, you could do that as well. So some really great backup options there that we can go through later as well. Remote access, so let's see here. It's going to do a little bit of spinning to figure out what it can do. Okay, so you could enable your TNAS online remote access, which is create a unique TNAS ID, remotely access your NAS device at any time from anywhere. So you create this ID, you select the server that you want to use. So in this case, it defaults to China. It's probably not one that I would want to use. In fact, I would probably just turn that off. But this does give you the ability to, to do it remote. So if I say that, I can then drop this down and pick, America instead. And it's recommended because I'm in America. They're saying, hey, look, you're way closer in America. You're going to have much less lag if you do it from here, which is great. And then you can give this thing an ID that has to be unique, of course. And then you've got instructions, access with the computer in the browser, address bar. And so you can see kind of different things, pretty nice. So you've got that. I'm just going to turn that back off for now. Turn it back off, yeah. And the changes have not been saved. That's fine, yeah, confirm, okay. And then they've got dynamic DNS, so we don't have this going yet, but we could set up dynamic DNS if we had the remote access set up as well. So lots of really cool little options here. There's a little plus here. So if we hit plus, it's going to say, hey, create a DNS connection. And then it's going to help you create a dynamic DNS connection that you can use to get back to your NAS device from away from home. So they got some pretty nice tools built into this just out of the gate. I'm interested to see what's on the App Store. And then, of course, we'll also check out the rest of the control panel and some of these other security settings when we get a chance. I want to give this time to finish it syncing, and then I'll come back and take a look at it with you. We have completed everything for the setup of this Bay NAS. Now, while I was waiting on it to do the sync, which said 1,720 minutes, which is a long time, that's like 36 hours probably, so 3 days. It didn't take that long. It actually only took through most of the night, so I would guess it probably took about 12 hours for that to happen. That was 8 terabytes. It did set everything up kind of automatically for us, which is really nice. And you can see here it's got the storage pool. And we've got a storage volume that it also created on its own. So the way that NAS systems work, for those of you that might be looking into a NAS and you're not really sure how this works, and this is really the terminology that gets a little confusing, and I'm not sure why others don't do this. This is really nice. They want you to be able to set up your own storage volumes and your own storage pools, kind of the way that you want to. In this case, since I had 2 drives, it kind of did an auto setup because that's what I picked. I picked the easy route, as they put it. But it creates a storage pool. So within your disks, so you have these different disks, and you can see some information here about the disks. Now, this device does not seem to have any SSD slots, whereas this other one, which I'll get to, does. So I went ahead and went through the setup on this one just to get through it. You can see it's got a little bit of a different user interface. It's got quite a few different things here in the actual control panel area as well. So they're set up a little different. The version of Terramaster OS looks to be a little bit different for each version. You can see here that it makes a call out to the device, and then once that device kind of responds back with the information, you'll see that information. I'm not sure why it's not showing us the disks here, but it may just be that I've been logged out for too long. I probably need to log back into it. Yeah, so we'll go back to this one and I'll log back into that one here in just a little bit. But the other device has some slots for 2 SSDs as well, besides the 4 bays there. So back to the hard drive. So you've got your hard drives. Your hard drives are set up in some kind of RAID array potentially. In this case, we've got I think it's a RAID 0 where it's just mirroring everything across. Then we've got our storage pool here. So it creates this storage pool, and that's what it was syncing all night on its own. Again, I've probably just not been active long enough, so it actually logged me out and it's just not showing me that. So let me refresh and I'll log back into it. There we go. Let's go back into the control panel here. So when you look at the control panel from here, you can see there's a lot of actual stuff. It's just not in that little side panel like you see on the other system. So I don't know if this system just hasn't had an updated version of the control panel, or which one's the newer, which one's the older. This looks to me to be the older style probably. But when you go through here, you've got a lot of different information here. You've got network statistics, so you can see all the network information that's going on. But then you've also got your disks, your volumes, your storage pools. So if we go into our hard drives here, again, you can see we've got our 2 hard drives set up in a RAID array. We can go to our storage pool. This is what was syncing all night, and then we've got this storage volume. So it shows us how much is in this volume, and this is what we can actually use to start moving data over to this storage volume. So it kind of creates those things in order for you. So you've got the disks, the raw space. Then once you RAID those up, you're going to create a storage pool out of that space. In this case, it's just called storage pool 1. And from that storage pool, you can go in and create volumes. Now, we just have a volume that's taking up the entire 8 terabytes here. Now, it's only using 14 megabytes, but it's got 8 terabytes of space to it. But the entire volume is dedicated to that, or that 8 terabytes is dedicated to this volume here. Now, you can make volumes that are smaller than this, so you can add volumes that have less space. So you could make 2 4 terabytes, or 4 2 terabytes, or 8 1 terabytes, whatever you want, and use those volumes for different purposes inside of a NAS. So the way it works is raw storage, storage pool. So the storage pool is generally like a larger chunk of space. And then in that pool, you can create different volumes, and those volumes are what you mount on other systems, or what you mount as your NAS storage, or where you SSH data over to, or FTP, or whatever you're going to use for your data moving. So this wasn't terrible to get set up. It was actually pretty straightforward. If we go back to the home, you can see here we've got all the different options here for our control panel. And we can say we can remove a folder, or we can see the applications, which we'll go through here in just a little bit.
So we've got network, and you can see the IP address, and you can go through and change these things. Of course, you can set this to be a static IP address instead of pulling from DHCP. You can see the interface information. So we've got 2 LAN ports. So one's connected, one's disconnected. You can see the state there, which is nice. It lets you know, like, hey, which one am I connected to? This one's, of course, getting a self-assigned IP because it has nothing connected right now. And then you've got a PPPoE port. I didn't notice that on the back, so maybe it's there and it's just covered up by the back plane or something like that. But nice to know that you've got that, and you could potentially put something in there as well. So it does have a Wi-Fi tab, but it's looking for a USB Wi-Fi adapter, so you'd have to have a USB Wi-Fi adapter. There's no built-in Wi-Fi. A VPN as well. You could add VPN connection. I don't know if this would include WireGuard. If we do create PPTP, OpenVPN, importing OpenVPN. So it's pretty much, here's your list. PPTP, which is not secure. You should not use this. OpenVPN, which is secure. You could do OpenVPN by importing an OVPN file, which you can create from things like your routers and stuff like that, or your firewalls, things like that. So with OpenSense and pfSense, you can create an OpenVPN profile and then get a .ovpn file that you can import. Your L2TP and IPsec kind of VPNs as well. So you've got a few different choices there for your VPNs. So interesting, and we're just going to cancel out of that, but no WireGuard, unfortunately. And then if you need a proxy connection to go out, you can actually set that up as well. So when we look at the file services here, we've got we can set up Samba, and it's enabled by default, so it's already going. We've got Apple File Protocol, so that'll let you do some sharing, kind of like with Time Machine, I think. You've got your FTP, so you could enable the FTP service if you want to. I would definitely suggest enabling it as SFTP and not just FTP. If you're on your local LAN and you want to do FTP and it's just you on the LAN, that's probably fine, but I still suggest SFTP if possible. NFS, which is a great protocol, so you could always set up an NFS share as well. Your rsync server, so you can enable your rsync server and then rsync things over to the system pretty easily as well. And then you've got WebDAV if you want to set up WebDAV syncing. So you've got a lot of different options for your file services and syncing. And this is generally the case on most NAS systems as well, but they've got a lot of really nice little protocols here. And it looks pretty easy to get them enabled. Check the box, maybe set the port, and you should be up and ready to go. We talked about the terminal, so we've got SSH and SNMP, so if you want to allow SSH, you can do that. Telnet, you can do that, so you would have to, of course, enable these things and set your appropriate ports for those things. So it does say allowed Telnet SSH access only within the local network, so you can restrict that to your local network addresses as well. Pretty nice as far as like just don't let people try to access this thing from outside the internet, from outside the local LAN. Directory services or discovery services, so you can turn on UPnP if you want to do that. Probably not something I would turn on, but some people may. And if you have Windows devices, Windows Discovery, this can be really helpful for setting up a shared drive on Windows if you're trying to do that. Bonjour, so again for Apple devices and just auto discovery, even with Linux systems. Both of them, they should both be able to discover things using either of these protocols. You shouldn't have to use UPnP for that. And then you've got your media index, so you can enable media streaming. So if you want to use this as also a media service client with some of the applications I'm sure they've got, you can enable that as well. So there's a lot in the control panel. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but it looks like it's got just a ton of features. I want to see if there's anything here that makes me just really go, okay, what else do I want to see? So notifications on a NAS is a pretty important one. Let's look at this really quick. So enable notifications. And you've got power. If there's an event where you have some kind of system event or storage management, you can check these things or uncheck these things and decide how do you want to be notified. So you get a notification here in the upper right, and you've seen that a couple of times. That's this top section. The next section is your SMTP notifications. So you can say set up local SMTP server, or you can create your own SMTP server. So you could just check this box and fill in your SMTP information if you wanted to use that for email notifications as well. So a really important area for you to set up if you're going to be setting this up and you want to make sure things are up and running. And then security-wise, you can go through here and kind of check out. You've got general, you've got your certificates, you've got your firewall information that you might want to turn on and set up if you need to. So you've got your account information. So here you can enable an automatic block. So if somebody tries to log in more than 10 times and they fail, it'll block that IP address. So it'll do some things that are pretty useful and pretty nice. So this is pretty helpful. Denial of service, enable denial of service protection. I don't know what this does, but it's there, and I guess it's probably valuable to go ahead and just turn it on. And then you've got this security isolation mode. So when you turn this on, it looks from what I'm understanding, this will basically limit the ability of this device to communicate with anything outside of your LAN. So it has to be inside your LAN to be able to communicate at that point. So it's going to block anything that's coming in from the outside internet. And it's really a security thing to help you keep your device secure. Now, if you're trying to access this when you're away from home, that's probably not going to be the best plan, so you may want to be a little bit careful. You could do it with something like a VPN tunnel with NetBird or Tailscale and still be able to access these things away from home, and you're doing it in a nice, secure way through that tunnel, but you'd have to test it and make sure it's going to function that way and make sure it works the way that you expect. But yeah, definitely this is a nice feature to have if you're worried about anybody getting into your data warehouse outside of your network and getting data. If you're using this for business, this might be a really valid thing to turn on, just depending again on how you're trying to run things. I do want to check out the applications section, so I'm just going to click here, and you can see here's all of the different applications. They've got recommended applications, so they've got a backup application right here. They've got centralized backup. I think that was already in there. I thought I saw it earlier. They've got Cloud Sync. I'm not a fan of Cloud Sync, but you might be wanting something for Cloud Sync as well. You've got Deduplication Manager. This can be really useful for saving space whenever you have a lot of files that might be duplicates in different parts of your regular systems, or all your systems may have different files and you're backing those folders up and that file is getting there every time. It'll check some hashes usually and say like, hey, does this actually have to be here twice, or can I just reference the version that's already here? Depending on how they're setting up their deduplication, it could just mean like, hey, we're going to take a snapshot initially of everything and then we're just going to save the changes. It just depends on what they've got running there, but still a great way to save space. Docker engine. So if you want to run Docker containers, you can install the Docker engine on this. You've got Duple Backup Vault. I'm not sure what that one is, but it looks like they've got a lot of backup applications, which is really great. That was one of the things that I felt like was really missing from the Ugreen NAS in the initial run. I need to review that one and see how their operating system has come along. But they didn't have a lot of backup applications, which was kind of a shame because that's the whole point of a NAS, is to be able to use it for a backup server. In this case, these guys have at least 4, if not 5 now that I've seen already. Again, multimedia server. You might want to take snapshots. You've got your, again, backup services here. You've got Surveillance Manager, which is kind of interesting. I might want to take a look at that one just to see what it looks like and how it functions. Your TNAS PC for Mac, I don't know what that is exactly, but it's okay. TNAS PC for Windows, I think this is their desktop application, so not sure that's really useful to put on here, but maybe it's a connector for that. You've got Photos application. Again, tons of applications here that they're trying to provide you some out-of-the-box functionality that would make this a really valuable system. You've got a Docker Manager application that's pretty nice. You've got VPN server. Usually a VPN server is really nice to have if it's an easy setup type server. It just depends on what it would take to set that up. You've got a web server, so if you want to run this as a web server application as well. You've got MB, you've got Plex. If you don't have Jellyfin in the list, I would just expect, and you don't, so you could go get that and run it in Docker. That would be my preference, honestly, over MB or Plex, but I get why they support those, out of the box. It's just popular applications that people have probably asked for. Now, that's just the recommended applications. They've got all applications here as well. And you can see we got quite a few added on top. And now if I scroll, you can see that little scroll bar. It's going to go quite a bit further than it did before. In fact, I saw the Nextcloud right there. So you can set this up as a Nextcloud server. You've got PHP just generally if you want to install PHP. You've got Python. You've got a lot of different things now that you can add into the system to make it a little bit more useful. So you've got an iTunes server. That's really interesting, actually. This is something I've kind of been messing with and trying to figure out. I use HomePod minis. They have incredible sound quality. And I do have an iPhone, but sometimes I'm sitting at my computer and I just want to play stuff through the HomePod mini. But my Linux machines can't connect directly to that HomePod mini because Apple, of course, restricts that by using AirPlay and AirTunes or whatever it is. So maybe this could do that. That'd be really nice if it could, because I could just set that up to maybe run that. But interesting that they have that. So VirtualBox is also here, which is pretty awesome. So if you did want to run some virtual machines using this hardware, you could do that as well, it looks like. So that's pretty great. I kind of like to see those kind of things. They've also got community apps. They're going to warn you like, hey, are you sure you want to go see this? So we're going to say yes. Let's go check out the community apps here. I'm sure you have to download these in a little bit different way, but it looks like they've got quite a few things. So here's Jellyfin right off the bat. I see that one. Here's Sonar. We've got zero tier, so if you're looking for a tunneling system, zero tier is another nice one. It's open source. I've never covered it just because I couldn't get the server itself like completely on my setup, my home hosted setup. It was always some piece had to be on their setup, and I didn't like that. It maybe has changed. It's been about 5 years since I've looked at that, to be honest. So I need to go back and check into it again. But here's Home Assistant. If you've been thinking about starting up Home Assistant, you can install that pretty easily. You got a lot of really great open source applications. Here's WireGuard, which I like to see. That's awesome. So you can set it up with a WireGuard connection. That's pretty nice. I'm curious. I don't really see a search, so it looks like you just have to kind of dig through here and find things. But they've got different stuff. Oh, here's a search bar right here. Let me see. Tail Scale. Let's just see if anybody's created a Tailscale app for this thing. Nothing found for Tailscale, so that's a shame. I'm sure a lot of people with Tailscale would love to have something where they could connect up their Terramaster, their Tailscale, Tailnet as they call it. Same thing for me for NetBird. I'd love to do that. It's Linux under the cover, so you can probably get to it and do it somehow anyways, but interesting to know. Yeah, so this thing is not bad. Now, I want to kind of go back to just overall hardware things. So they've got a backup application already set up here. So you've got rsync backup, you've got file system snapshot, time machine backup. So you've got a lot of things here where this can act as a backup server already. So I'm not sure why they're showing up in the App Store and saying install when you've already got them listed here, but this is one of the things that for me makes a huge difference in a NAS system, is having these things kind of built in. If you go with true NAS, you have this stuff kind of built in, but you have to turn on the service to accept FTP connections, or if you want to accept SSH connections, or if you want to accept AFP connections, or SMB connections, or whatever other kind of connection. Once you've enabled that service, you really just have to go out and get your client machines to connect to it and back things up to those locations that you've set up inside of TrueNAS. Alright, I've got everything hooked up, and we're going to go into the BIOS, and I'm going to show you some things I had to change so that I could actually get the Terramaster OS to also boot. You do need to move that little USB drive, but we're also going to look at a couple of things in the BIOS that you might need to change as well. And once you start the boot process, you need to press the delete key just repeatedly until you get into the BIOS. Now, I've noticed that the Terramaster logo stays up here for 15 to 20 seconds sometimes. Just be patient. It just takes a few seconds to get to it, but if you keep hitting that delete key, you should get taken into the BIOS. And there we are. And you're going to go over here to boot. And the first thing you probably want to do is change the order of your boot. So I changed it so that a USB device would boot first, then it would boot off of the NVMe drive that I installed, which right now is saying Windows Boot Manager, but we're going to change that up probably. Then you've got the hard disks on the inside, CD, DVD, and all these other kind of things. So these, you may want to change that order. I also went down here and changed, this had a different drive that was set to start, and I just disabled one of them. I left the Windows NVMe drive set to start, and I disabled the other one for now for booting. Once you've done that, you should be set there, and we're going to go over to Fast, this Fast menu. And here we're going to go down, and there's a couple of different things we want to look at, but most of this stuff you just want to leave. Make sure your SSDs are enabled, make sure all of your hard drives are enabled, make sure your NICs are enabled, everything like that. If you want wake from LAN and wake from USB, you probably want to enable that as well. As we go down, there is Quick Boot, which I left enabled, that's fine, but then they've got this one that's also enabled by default, and it says TOS boot first, which is Terramaster OS boot first. So if that's enabled, it's going to try to boot Terramaster OS no matter what you do. So you just want to go down, highlight this thing, you're going to hit enter to bring it up like this, and you can just switch with the arrow keys to disabled and then hit enter. And that should be the last thing you have to do. You're going to jump over to the exit menu. Make sure you've got save, changes, and exit highlighted like I do here on the screen. And then you're just going to press enter and then say yes, just to save any changes you've made. It'll reboot the system, so be patient for a second. And I've already got my Ventoy USB drive plugged in. So again, once it comes up, it's going to take, anywhere from 10 to 20 seconds to actually get to that boot section. Just, again, be patient. It's probably going through some diagnostics, things like that in the background, make sure all the drives are turning on, that kind of stuff. So just give it a minute. Now the way that I'm accessing all of this where I can record it is I'm using a Pi KVM system, so I'm actually controlling that machine through the machine that I'm recording from. It's a really cool system. I don't think I've ever really covered it in full detail, but it's pretty awesome, and it's open source software, which is great. So here I've got my list of different options. I've got TrueNAS Scale and Proxmox both on here. So I think I'm going to go Proxmox first, just because I'm much more comfortable in that. But TrueNAS Scale, the new one, does have some pretty awesome stuff where they've switched out Kubernetes for Docker, which is awesome. So I may go back and check that one out. But for now, just because I'm more comfortable with Proxmox, let's go through and set that one up. And after a little bit of effort, I have gotten both TrueNAS Scale and Proxmox installed on the Terramaster system. And going through the BIOS and turning off those features was correct. I was trying to use a Ventoy drive, and it just didn't seem to want to work for either one of them very well. So I went back and just used a startup disk creator tool, and that seemed to work. That seemed to function the way you expect. So I've gotten both of these installed. They show all the disks, everything you'd expect. And of course, if we go to the summary pages, there's all the disks. And if we go to the summary page, you can see the summary stats for how the system's running right now. I've already run the updates to make sure everything would update correctly. So yeah, I think everything's working great. I think this would be a really nice Proxmox system overall. I think Proxmox is a great tool just for running your home lab. You can make things pretty easy, and you can do things in a little bit easier way. TrueNAS is another really great one that makes it a lot easier because they've got these nice web interfaces to manage everything for you, so you can kind of do that from wherever you are in the house. It's not something where you have to go to a specific machine to manage all of that stuff, which is pretty great as well. One of the fun things I wanted to talk about is the pricing on the Terramaster NAS. Now, I originally went through the pricing, and I actually had a little bit of an issue with the pricing that I saw, and talking to a friend of mine about it because I was a little bit concerned. You know, he pointed out one thing. I don't build NAS systems. I don't have any idea what it costs to build a NAS system. So I'm using the F4 424 Max, and it's got a little bit more capability. It's got a 12-core processor, things like that. But overall, I mean, it's $900 US. You're talking about $200 to $300 more than the Ugreen that's of equivalent specs. I personally think that the Ugreen and the Terramaster are of pretty close build quality. The Terramaster is very easy to get into. Neither one of them makes it really easy to take their operating system off and put on a new operating system. So Terramaster, you have that little USB inside of the case you have to look for, and it looks just like the little USB chiclet thing that you plug in for a keyboard and mouse. You just have to pull that out, go change the BIOS settings like I showed you, and then the system should boot from whatever OS you want to put on it. That said, $900 plus the cost of the drives, to me, is a pretty big expense. If I was to go out and look and compare and want to buy something, Terramaster would probably not float to the top of my list. I don't think there's enough differentiation there. I will say the Terramaster OS is very, very, very much more polished than what I saw with Ugreen. The Terramaster OS does do some things that makes it really easy for the newbie coming into the NAS space to get set up very easily and not have to understand about the separate disks and about RAID and about pools and about volumes and all of the things that go along with knowing how to set up your NAS system. And every system has a slightly different take on that vocabulary, and it does make it complicated. So I love that they made it really easy. That's one of the things that I have asked for from TrueNAS and from Proxmox and from all of the others who make any kind of NAS or server appliance like that. I think if you would just give people an easy button, that would be great, just because it helps them get started and they can have time to learn about all the things that you did. Or you could give them a report about the things you did and why you did it. It would be great for them to learn and then let them go back and customize later. That said, the pricing, I think, is fine. Terramaster has priced this where they feel it's the best place for them as a business. I think it's up to you to decide, is this something that's worth it to you? If you're a person who's new to the NAS space and you're just not sure how to set all this stuff up and you don't understand all of the terminology and you're like, I just want to get something set up so I can back things up or so I can host my media or so I can do something, then this might be the right pick for you with the Terramaster OS on it, because it does make it really easy to get started. I have to say right now, it makes it very easy to get started. Just wanted to go through the pricing just so you understand what it is. I get nothing out of this. If you go buy a Terramaster, I don't get anything. I don't get any affiliate pricing. I don't get any percentage of it, nothing. It's just so that you understand what the pricing looks like. If we go down and look at the 2-bay version, which is the F2 424, again, there's a little bit of a pricing difference between what you look at here, and it depends on what you get with the CPU and things like that. But now you're talking $379. This one over here is $169, like $200. This may be a better starting deal, but you've got 1 gig of RAM. So you'd have to go in and update the RAM. I'm not sure if you can even do that. You'd have to get in and check it out. Here you're starting off with a little bit more, which is nice. Again, $400, it's up to you. I don't know if I could say, yeah, two drives, $400, totally worth it for me. If I'm going to spend the money, I'm probably going to go a little bit more expensive, spend about $600, get something with at least 4 bays. It's just the type of thing that I feel like is important to me, that I'm getting the most for my money. But I'm also the person who doesn't mind sitting down and trying to figure things out a little bit to get the most out of the hardware that I buy. Again, if you're new, this may be a really, really good option for you. If you're a business, this may be a really good option for you because you're not an IT person, you're a business owner, and you just want something that you can use as a shared drive and a NAS and a backup system. This could be amazing for you. So I just want to say, take a look at the pricing, understand the pricing, and then you can make an educated decision for yourself and for your business so that you understand what your options are. I want to say thank you so much to Terramaster for reaching out to me to ask me to do this review. I know that this review took way longer than they ever expected. It also took longer than I expected. I was hoping to knock this out in a day and have it done, but I wanted to make sure that I gave it the attention that it deserved. I wanted to make sure that I gave you the information that you needed. And I wanted to make sure that I gave them the video that they deserve. The Terramaster OS is really great. I would love it if it was open source. I would prefer that it was open source. I really would. But it is based on open source technology underneath. It's based on Linux underneath the covers. But the OS itself is not open source yet. Someday maybe they'll open source it. That would be awesome. But today it's not. I do love a lot of the things that they've done with it. I think they've done an incredible job. And I think this is an incredible appliance. If you've been looking for something that's just really ready to go off the shelf, stick in your drives, plug it in, start it up, and get really walked through a very simple setup process, Terramaster seemed like a really great way to go. I wanted to make sure that you guys understood as much as I could give you about it, as much information as I could provide you about it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.